For years, we've heard about this so-called shadow war between Iran and a U.S. Israeli coalition. Well, the shadows are officially gone. What we're witnessing now is a direct, out-in-the-open conflict. And this isn't just about redrawing the map in the Middle East. It's threatening to pull the trigger on a global economic crisis. So in this explainer, we are going to break down exactly how we got to this point and what could possibly happen next.
Okay, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll walk through the timeline. How do we get from quiet strikes to all-out war? Then we'll look at the playbook for each side. You've got the coalition's incredible air power versus Iran's very different strategy of economic warfare. After that, we'll zoom in on the Strait of Hormuz. This is the flashpoint that could really mess things up for everyone. And finally, we'll look at the desperate diplomatic endgame and the attempts to pull back from the brink. So first things first, how did this shadow war suddenly explode into a full-blown conflict? Well, it really wasn't sudden at all. It was more like a slow burn of escalating attacks that finally just lit up the entire region. Just look at this timeline. The escalation has been absolutely relentless. We went from these very targeted strikes to something we'd never seen before. Iran launching a direct missile attack on Israeli soil. That right there, that was a massive red line crossed. And it's what led directly to the huge coordinated air campaign that's going on right now. Each one of these events isn't just a date. It's another step up a very, very dangerous ladder. Okay, so with the fight now completely out in the open, the U.S. and Israel did what they do best. They unleashed their single greatest advantage, just overwhelming air power. And the goal was pretty clear, to systematically take apart Iran's ability to fight back. And get this, since the main offensive kicked off in February of 2026, coalition forces have hit over 7,000 targets inside Iran. I mean, the sheer scale of this operation is just immense. And what's really fascinating here is the strategy that this reveals. These aren't just random strikes. No, this is a calculated, systematic effort to basically defang Iran's conventional military. They're going after everything from their nuclear sites to their leadership, even bridges and refineries to cripple their logistics. And this air campaign, it's had a huge impact. The Israeli Defense Forces are claiming they've taken out more than 2/3 of Iran's known missile launchers. This is a direct shot at neutralizing the one threat that's been hanging over Israeli cities for years. So you might be wondering, how does Iran fight back against that kind of overwhelming air power? The truth is, they can't. Not in a conventional fight. So they had to get creative and shift their strategy to inflict pain in a totally different way.
And Iran's response has been a textbook example of asymmetric warfare. They knew they were outgunned in the air, so they just chose a different battlefield entirely, the global economy. The whole strategy is to cause so much financial pain that the U.S. and its allies are forced to the negotiating table, whether they like it or not. And you can see their two-pronged approach right here. On one side, they keep firing missiles and drones at Israel, constantly testing those really sophisticated air defenses like the Iron Dome. But on the other side, they're hitting much softer targets, these high-value economic sites in neighboring Gulf countries that happen to be allied with the U.S. And believe me, these attacks are incredibly strategic. They are going right for the crown jewels of the Middle East's energy infrastructure. I'm talking about places like Laffan in Qatar. That's one of the biggest natural gas exporters on the planet. A successful hit there doesn't just start a fire, it sends massive shockwaves through global energy markets. And all of this brings us to the single most critical economic flashpoint in this whole conflict. That tiny, narrow waterway that a huge chunk of the world's oil has to pass through. The Strait of Hormuz. 22. That's the number of commercial ships that have been attacked or just flat out seized in the Persian Gulf in the last month alone. Iran has effectively turned the world's most vital oil shipping lane into a no-go zone for a lot of countries. And this isn't just some hypothetical threat. Remember that Laffan facility in Qatar? A single Iranian strike there took 17% of the entire world's liquefied natural gas supply offline. Just gone. The impact was instantaneous. Energy prices shot through the roof, and countries all over the world started to feel the pain. So this is the bottom line. This is the end result of Iran's strategy. What you have is a de facto blockade. For any ship that's aligned with the U.S. or its allies, trying to get through the strait is just too big of a risk. Now, this brutal stalemate, with both sides taking heavy hits, has sort of forced everyone reluctantly back toward the negotiating table. But the question is, with so much bad blood and so much on the line, can diplomacy actually work? Even though the White House is publicly saying the Iranian threat is nearly eliminated, they have signaled there's a potential path for a deal, even if it's a really narrow one. This quote right here, it kind of suggests they know the economic blowback is getting to be too much to handle. But, and this is a huge but, if you look at their starting positions, the two sides are just worlds apart. Iran wants money, war reparations, and total control over the very strait they've closed down. And the U.S.? They're demanding Iran stop all the activities that Iran sees as its only real leverage. That gap is just enormous.
And that's really the question, isn't it? The whole world is basically holding its breath. We're at this critical moment where the very next move could lead to some kind of fragile peace, or it could tip us into an even more devastating chapter of this conflict. The stakes just could not be any higher.